Hi everybody, and welcome to a special episode of the AGSM Business of Leadership podcast. If you're a first-time listener, my name is Nick Wales and I'm the Director of AGSM. We're putting the final touches to the next season of the podcast, including episodes on the business of work, the supply chain and AI. We've been speaking with industry guests from Microsoft, Mirvac, Airbnb and many other organisations, and we're looking forward to sharing these episodes with you early in the new year. In the meantime, we're sharing a special podcast featuring Shemara Wikramanayake, the Managing Director and CEO of Macquarie Group, in conversation with UNSW's Chancellor David Gonski. In a wide-ranging conversation recorded at the recent Meet the CEO event in Sydney, Shemara shared her thoughts on a huge range of topics, including leadership, building a culture of purpose, the future of green investment, how to play to your strengths and take calculated risks, and also how to maintain a learning mindset throughout your career. A bit about Shemara. She holds 2 degrees from UNSW, a Bachelor of Commerce and a Bachelor of Laws, and joined Macquarie Group in 1987. She's worked in 6 countries and across many lines of business, establishing and leading Macquarie's corporate advisory offices in New Zealand, Hong Kong and Malaysia, and the infrastructure funds management business in the US and Canada. Shemara sits on the World Bank's Global Commission on Adaptation and was the founding CEO of the United Nations Climate Finance Leadership Initiative. With a resume like that, I'm sure you'll understand why we felt you needed to hear this conversation. And now, over to David Gonski with Shemara Wikramanayake.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Shemara. That's an in-joke. Can I firstly say, for those of you who are expecting an experienced interviewer tonight, bad luck. But I think the Chancellor has some power, and I just overrode everybody else and I got the job. But I just want to quickly say that I met Shemara 37 years ago, and she came as a Christmas beetle. Christmas beetle she was, from a very well-known university, and I could tell that today we'd be sitting here and I could find out a bit more about her 37 years later, and it's a great privilege. Shemara, I want to go back a bit and then we'll move through, if we may, to more contemporary issues. The first question I wanted to ask you is, when you look at your CV, you were born in England, you were schooled in a number of schools, coming here at 13. Does any of that play anything in your mind today? And what was it like moving from one school to another and indeed to a new country?
Certainly it's played and had a big impact in what I've done with my life, because I think for all of us, we end up being a product of nature and nurture. So we're formed by the characters we're born with, but also the life experiences we have and how they develop us. And as you say, David, when I came here at 13, I think I was in my 5th school on my 3rd continent. So I was born when my dad's over here, when my parents were studying as doctors or working as, Dad was a doctor in England, and he just had my sister who's here as well, Mum and he. And so I was shipped at 3 months old back to Sri Lanka, grew up with my grandparents for a bit. Family came back, then we had civil strife in Sri Lanka. We went to England, and I think I moved schools 3 times there, and then we came here. So, it could have been quite destabilising circumstances, but I guess 2 things that helped me is, one is our parents were, a very stable, protective and empowering environment for us through all those countries that we moved to. We had the 5 of us together. Mum and Dad were really making sure we not only were protected but empowered to think about we could be anything we want. So I think certainly when we were in England, we went through financially really difficult times. My sister tells me, I don't remember it, that we were in a 1-bedroom flat. Mum slept in the bed with the 3 kids. Dad was sleeping on a couch, trying to find locum work. I was just having a ball going and, being at school with West Indian and Italian kids all punching each other up in the playground. No idea that we were poor. But Dad and Mum always, every country we were in, I never ended up thinking that I'd do anything but get to go to the best universities in that country, get to have a fulfilling career. And the other thing I think is that Dad was and Mum, very gender blind. So when we went to England, he could afford to send 1 kid to partly private school. And that ended up being my sister, who was the oldest of the 3 of us, instead of my brother, who was the youngest but a boy. So I think in terms of my life experience, I certainly got a lot of protection and vision in terms of what I could do despite moving a lot. The other thing I think is your character. And I am, I think, a very resilient person. So as I say, I didn't notice we were dirt poor because things change externally and I just accept very quickly things that I can't control, that are circumstances beyond my ability to impact, and I start focusing on what can I control and getting on with, when I was in Sri Lanka, I thought I'd grow up there and go to uni, then I went to England, I thought, I'll go to Oxford and Cambridge, and then I came here and ended up at New South Wales. Lucky me. I ended up here.
Lucky us.
Very blessed. But yeah, and so I was resilient and also very curious. For me, it was fantastic moving countries all the time. I just loved the adventure of ending up in a different country, learning new cultures, meeting new people. For some people, that could have been destabilising. For me, it was great. We also were a professional middle-class family, so we were given a huge choice of careers of medicine, law, finance, accounting, engineering, that sort of thing. We were not going to be James Bond or an astronaut or other things that I might have liked to do. So my sister's a lawyer and works with people with disabilities. My brother is a doctor and he's a surgeon, and I did law and went into finance. And I guess the main reason I did law is because I was a bit of a rebellious kid as well, and Dad was a doctor and very associated with Sydney University, so I thought I'm going to break out and do my own wild thing, which is go to New South and study conversation. So that was me rebelling. And the thing I loved about the degree is just gave you such a broad range of options. So you didn't have to lock down on, this is how my life is going to be, because I just wanted to have a meandering adventure. And it was a great place to go and a great degree, I found.
I think you're the first person that ever said it was rebellious to go to university.
Yeah, I know.
But we like it. I'm sure many here have stories.
You that my son, who was at New South, has now dropped out and is trying to find the purpose of his...
No, let's change the subject.
Well, I was thinking,
I'm talking about
rebel and do medicine at Sydney?
but talking about dropping out, so your legal career was not lengthy, like about a year, and then you went into banking. What led you to that?
Well, as I said, the thing about that commerce law degree we did is the range of options was massive, and I've got a whole lot of my buddies who were at law school with me 37 years ago, guys, when we were about 6. But they have gone on to do such a spectrum of things, people in marketing, people in business and asset management, people in the arts, a whole range of things, lawyers, people on the bench. So basically we had a lot of choice, and so we bumbled our way out of uni and we all went to do different things, mostly law firms initially. For me, the reason I ended up in finance, I think, is I was always a bit of a maths geek, and so I did a commerce degree as well as a law degree. I loved working in corporate law. It was so stimulating, and I worked for you as well, David. It was considered the prize job.
That was the law bit, though.
Yeah. But I missed working with numbers, and the other thing I liked about the role I had in banking is you get into businesses a lot earlier than when they decide they're going to do a transaction and they bring a lawyer in. And I remember thinking it was a little bit, because as lawyers we charge by the hour, and they were thinking, it cost me to have you in here. Because we bankers, in the work I did, we got paid success fees. So they didn't really care that we were bumbling around their corridors going, what's happening here? Because they were paying us nothing. And it was just great getting into these businesses and sectors and thinking about, what's going on in retail or what's going on in energy, and getting to learn a bit and think about how can I help them get to the next stage. And then we got into the transaction, but you learned a lot more about the sector. And so they were a couple of things that took me there. But, the New South Wales Commerce Law degree was brilliant, because I was saying earlier when we were discussing this that the technical skills I got there were just amazing, because I know people do these broad US degrees and things. I'm still using my law and finance learnings today. Also, the way we were taught to think for ourselves, especially in the law school, that Socratic teaching method, we were always questioning things and thinking about what impact we can have beyond ourselves, which I loved. And then we also felt empowered with a very broad choice. In fact, I was mentioning one of the things I loved as well about the law school is the diversity of the melting pot of a whole range of people, and they just taught me to think very differently compared to even the schools I've been in. I've been in lots of countries, lots of different schools, and my mind got opened up even more at New South. So
I could listen to you telling how wonderful the University of New South Wales is for hours. But let me move it. So in 1987, you set off to Macquarie Bank. And I should just mention Tony Berg, who I think was the CEO then.
Yes, he was.
Moore, another CEO, is here. And it just shows something about Macquarie that they bothered to turn up today. I think it's fantastic.
I didn't have to pay him much.
in front of them, tell us what it was like. And in particular, there are many who talk about the absence of women in banking at the time. Was it a problem? How did you deal with it?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think being at UNSW taught me not to look at all at the box I came in. So I didn't make it my problem. It was really about what impact can you go and have in the world. So I wasn't sitting there thinking, oh, they're thinking I'm a black, short female, blah, blah, judging me by this stuff. I was just sitting in the room thinking, what can we get done? And I have to say, Tony was our CEO at the time. Nicholas was running the project in structured finance business, a very big influence on the floor I was working on. I didn't get the impression at all that, it was, oh, you're female, you can't come and work on this. It was really, what can you bring? What ideas have you got? Didn't even matter that I was basically excuse my language, but the shit kicker at the time I joined. People ask you for your views, and I do that all the time as well, because it's a very open environment. And I think Macquarie's always got that as a services business, our key asset is people. And we have to create an environment to get the best out of those people if the business is going to do well. So it was always a business that's trying to attract diverse people from whatever areas, socioeconomic backgrounds, genders, ethnicities, that can challenge each other and come up with better views, and then empower all those people to be contributing as much as they could to the business. And that's how we did best. So I certainly felt very empowered. You play to your strengths. My particular case, I was putting my hand up to go and start all our offshore offices. So I think in that early period, I worked in 9 cities and 6 countries and a whole range of business lines. And we were all just given the opportunity to do what we wanted. So I remember New Zealand was one of our first big offshore expansions that I went to do after I moved from Sydney to Melbourne. And the boss I was working for at the time went to our one New Zealander and said, hey, I'm thinking of starting a New Zealand office. Do you reckon you could go? And he said, why do you think I left there? Small market, nothing to do. And I thought, beautiful Southern Alps and all of this, I'll go. And then I turned up there and I thought, what the frig did I agree to this for? I don't know anyone on these guys. But there was a little team of half a dozen of us, and we were so supported from the mothership. And we just got on with thinking about, okay, the electricity sector is being restructured. What can we do? There's 6 banks here. There should only be 4. What should we do? And put one foot in front of the other, and within a few years we were top of the league table. I remember we made a double-digit million fee on something. It was big back then. And then Alan Moss turned up and told me I'd been made an executive director, and I thought, oh my God, I didn't think I was ever going to be one of those. But you were just getting on with trying to have impact, I think. That is what Macquarie was like.
I want to get off talking about New Zealand and things, because what I want to know is you chose to come back to Australia.
Yeah.
And indeed, you're running a massive organisation from Australia. Is there something significant both in yourself and indeed about Australia that decision was made?
Well, I mean, look, the reason I came back is my parents were then in their late 70s. And, we'd had our kids, and I wanted my kids to grow up near my parents, and I also wanted to be there for mum and dad because, as I said, they were there for us through all of our childhood. So we came back thinking, hopefully they'll make it to their mid-80s and we can be around. But now here's Dad's here in his 90s, and we're very happy to have you, Dad. But so it's been a long stint back home. But I have to say it's been a great place to raise kids. But it's also a great place to do business from. This Aussie culture of, it's an egalitarian sort of culture of, it's meritocratic like Macquarie is, I think, of letting people just try to unleash their full potential. So I've loved living here. I think for Macquarie, a third of our shareholder base is Aussie retail, and they're so loyal and they've really supported us forever. A lot of the institutions have held us since the time we listed in 1996. And we have regulated, APRA, our principal banking regulator, is based here. It's a great regulatory framework to work under, together with Canada, probably one of the best banking sectors in the world. So, yes, it does mean time zones-wise it's a bit challenging. So we're doing management committee calls all through the night with people in the UK and US and early morning. But, if you have a global business, if you're working in Australia for the New York head office, you're up late hours. So I think Australia is a great place and really aligns with, I guess, we're English by birth, my sister and I, and we're Sri Lankan by descent, but I say we're Australian by choice. Like adoption, I guess we took up citizenship here. So
And that's a lovely answer. According to my researchers, you are leading 19,000 people in 34 markets.
Yeah.
How does one lead one person, let alone 19,000
Yeah.
in 34 markets? What's the secret sauce?
Well, I think the way you lead is very different depending on what the function and the business is you're leading. Like, imagine if I were in the army, I would really need to be, directing the troops of what needs to be done exactly when, and we all need to be very coordinated and directed. At Macquarie, I think you were saying there's an expression I've used called leading 1,000 leaders or leading 19,000 leaders. But really what I have to do is create a culture where they're all empowered to act like a leader and get on with it. So that for me is what it's like. So basically I sit on my desk with my feet up and they get on with things if it's working well. But, I use the example of when we went into China. I was talking about earlier offshore expansion. I was just talking to somebody who was a key part of that. But none of us said, let's put a flag on the map in China. Some of our real estate people said, urbanisation's happening, they're going to need residential real estate. They went up to Tianjin and started building residential real estate. And then what happened is, as that went on, they thought, you know what, they need shopping centres. So they went to second and third tier cities. They figured who to partner with, came and asked the House for capital and perspectives on risk. Then when the online shopping started, it started in China, way before anywhere in the world. So we went into industrial warehousing and logistics because our team in China saw that, and then we were able to take it everywhere. But you can't top down do this stuff because, those of us sitting in Sydney had no idea what was going on in the ground in China. We do be very disciplined on risk and funding and capital and things. So we make sure we have the funding and capitals and buffers. We think about worst case outcomes when we're giving them capital and really understand the risk. And we think about the operating platform to support them. But apart from that, it's trying to create a framework to just unleash the potential of these people and they get on with it. So they're all over the world doing a lot of different things in a lot of different countries. And, often I follow them. Like, people say to me, what are you doing? I was just in Egypt, in Sharm el-Sheikh, in the COP27 climate conference, and they would say to me, aren't you a great leader leading Macquarie into green stuff? And I was thinking, no, I'm a great follower, because I go where the teams say, all right, we have this opportunity, we're all doing stuff in the climate transition, you need to get here and engage with these people, help us get relationships with these partners. And so I'm pretty much doing what I'm told instead of telling people to do what I tell them.
Well, if you're prepared to do what you're told, what's your view on mentors? Have you had mentors?
Yeah.
What do you, to all those who are watching and here, what do you say to people who say, I think mentors are good or bad?
I think definitely, one of my friends' dads when I was little said, life is too short to learn everything you need to know from your own mistakes. You've got to learn from the mistakes of others. And that was great advice because I listen to people all the time, and we were just chatting with someone about the wonderful Michael Coper, who was teaching us contracts when we were at uni, and my friends might remember there was a point where I decided, I've had a gut full of this, I'm going to drop out. And he came and sat with me in a stairwell. He'd been teaching me contracts. And he's just so good at playing the psychology of it all, because he was going to me, you can't drop out of uni. And I said, but, I'm bored and I want to go and do all these other things. And he said to me, no, you should keep doing this because you're very good at it. And it was a clever thing to do. It was such great psychology. And I'm trying to do that with my dropout son now. But obviously it's not working decades on. But he was fantastic. First of all, he taught contract in such a wonderful... I'm not saying contracts, it was constitutional law, but he really taught us... I loved that subject because he taught us so many different perspectives of every judge on every case and stimulated us a lot. But he played me very well, so I thought he was a great mentor. Ronnie Khan of Oz Harvest, I find a great mentor. She's doing community work, but the values she lives up to and the way she's prepared to challenge conventional thinking. But even at work, like we have these employee network groups now in areas like neurodiversity, pride, whatever. I've learned so much from them. I remember sitting with a young colleague in one of the pride employee networks groups where I was thinking, what is you guys' problem about your sexuality? Because I have to wear my skin colour and my gender and ethnicity and tiny height and all that on my sleeve so people can judge me based on it, whereas nobody knows your sexuality, so you can just get on with work. And we did an exercise where you had to talk to this person for 10 or 15 minutes, but not say the gender of your partner. And it was so difficult. And it made me realise the challenge they're all dealing with, coming to work, having to tiptoe around and hide something. It impacts how good a job you can do. So, when you say mentors, it made me realise, actually, we, Macquarie, are missing out because we're letting these people be impeded in coming to work every day and not deliver. So I've had lots of experiences like that. Our Neurodiversity Employee Network group did a video on the things going on in their heads, the challenges they face, but how they can contribute differently. So, yeah, you learn from people all the time. Kids that start new at work, I've sat in open plan till Nicholas dropped me in his office when I took this CEO role off him, but I used to sit in open plan until then. And the kids who are on the pod would teach me all this tech stuff about my computer, which I had no idea how to work. So you just learn from people all the time.
It's clear you've got a very strong sense of community. One of the things one is definite about Macquarie, and I think that's been inculcated by many in this room, as well as yourself, is that, I read the other day that 500 million Australian dollars have been given by the Macquarie Foundation and staff over a period of time. You obviously got a view on philanthropy and being involved in community. Do you want to share that with us? Because many of us focus on where we're going. It's quite hard sometimes to think about some of the other people who want to go places.
Yeah, when I was at Ascomage about 14 and we were studying all this existentialist literature about life being meaningless because it ends in death, and I remember thinking, well, that's the whole thing that gives life meaning, is that you get this one shot and I'm going to have a jolly good time with the 60 years I thought I'd get. I hope it's now more than 60. But, but I just had this here for a good time, long time perspective on life. But then as I got more comfortable and I realised having a good time with myself was easy, I was thinking, well, what else can I do with my limited time here, and started thinking about how I could have impact. And I mentioned, because of UNSW and a whole lot of things, I realised the value of education. So that was one of the first places I personally started getting involved in the community. And Nicholas runs a program at the moment where we help refugees from Syria, Afghanistan, etc., mentoring, and it's a phenomenal program. So a lot of us are involved in education, but the Macquarie Foundation basically multiplies the impact you can have. And David Clark, who was our co-founding CEO, basically said early on in his time that that businesses are part of the society in which they operate. And he said it was logical that they should work for the betterment of that society and create value, and hence, be able to share in that value and create value for the business, and we should be aligned. And David set up our foundation in 1985 when we took the banking license. And what he decided is that the way we were going to run it is basically engaging our staff in the community and following them, the way Macquarie operates as a business. So the 500 million we've given isn't all Macquarie's money, it's Macquarie and staff. Because what we decided is we'll let staff in their local communities figure out where they have passion, where they want to give their time and skill and expertise and their money, and then we'll match them with money and putting teams together, etc. We do a lot of work with Raise Youth Mentoring. That was started by some of our colleagues who got passionate about it, and then hundreds of our staff have been Raise mentors. We raise gazillions for it every year, but through the staff doing programs and our matching. And you've engaged with Macquarie in a few areas of our giving. So I was privileged that Nicholas at one stage asked me to take over as chair of the foundation. You asked me to do a few jobs, Nicholas, and I think that's the only one I put my hand up for happily. And but they were all good things that he asked me to do. I learned a lot from them, but that was the one thing you said to me that I just went, yep, I'm in. But at the time, we were giving about 18 million a year, and 3 million was being given by staff. So 3 mil went in matching, and Lisa George, who's still the head of the foundation, who who's amazing. And I thought, we need to catalyse our staff even more. So we went on a big push to get the staff engaged. And by the end of my period, where I handed over to another amazing successor, Mary Reams, but we had the staff giving 12 mil a year. So we were giving 30 million between us and the staff a year. Now that meant we only had 6 million left for strategic giving. So we had to think about how we mobilise our staff to coordinate their giving to have impact in each area, be it mental health or whatever. But that's the way the Macquarie Foundation has operated, and it was endemic to how Macquarie operated, I think, starting with David. And I think it's one of the things that people are most proud of, that it's really leveraging our people as the whole of Macquarie operates.
So tell me, and I don't want inside information because I'll share it with everybody here.
And then it won't be inside anymore.
You've become a CEO of a very well, magnificently run company with a great reputation. Where to from here? Where do you want to take Macquarie? And obviously we only want public information, but more particularly, we're interested in you. What do you see as the CEO's role at Macquarie going forward?
Yeah, well, I think it's what it's always been, which is creating, the biggest role is empowering all these people and perpetuating that culture. But in addition to that, there are things in the centre we're responsible for. So things like making sure we have disciplined funding and capital. We're sitting on $12.2 billion of surplus capital as we go into a difficult economic cycle, termed out funding, $100 billion of cash and liquids, our risk management systems and making sure we have this independent risk management, which I think we were the first organisation in the world to set up, has been critical to our survival. And we've had 53 years of unbroken profitability and very stable returns on equity compared to global peers. And I think the risk, our operating platform and making sure, the technology and things are at the latest. And then a little bit of strategic deciding what we should play in and what we shouldn't, and putting businesses together or helping grow another one or getting out of something, but really based on what opportunities the troops are bringing to us. But when you say what's next, I think we're 53 years young, not 53 years old. And when I look at, we were just doing some work on an offsite on the weekend we're running an Aussie digital banking, awesome offering. If you're not a Macquarie customer, you should switch your banking over there because it's the best experience. But we're 4.8% of the mortgage market, and out of our 70 bill market cap, we were saying to the guy who runs banking, you're probably worth about 10 bill, is what the CommBank's worth 180 bill. So get off your butt because, there's just a long runway and you need to keep going with this. Equally, the guy who runs our asset manager, and, Nicholas, you originated the infrastructure business for us, but we're the world's biggest infrastructure manager, real estate, blah, blah, private credit. People think we're a huge asset manager. It's probably worth 25 billion of our 70 billion, but, 25 bill, Blackstone is worth $200 billion. So again, we're saying to him, get off your butt. There's just a long way to go. Can you get on with it? Similarly, with all our businesses, we're in investment banking, in commodities and M&A and all of that. JP Morgan's a $580 billion business, so there's a very long way for us to go there. We're sort of a little Darwinian organism that keeps evolving and adapting with the external environment changing. And I think now some of the things playing out there are that the community expects much more of business. So it's become aligned with what David said, not just money making. But, we've always looked for unmet community need. Where do we have deep expertise to impact that and make a difference? How can we create value and share in it? So things like urbanisation and the need for infrastructure, whether it's urban or social infrastructure, etc. The energy transition, all four of our operating groups play a role in that. Originating early stage, energy investments or EV, business of leasing EVs, helping people through the energy disruption at the moment in Europe. Digitalisation, we're playing a big role in that because everything is being disrupted by technology, and we do a lot in that, including our digital banking offering. So there are a bunch of thematics there that we play in. Also, at the moment, the macroeconomic situation where we're having interest rates surging and, inflation and driving the central banks to put up interest rates, possibly recessions. What we do in our asset manager is connect the savings of individuals in the world with places where the community needs capital invested and bring some expertise to that. And that need is going to grow even more as governments are more indebted and private money is funding a lot of these community needs. So thematically, there's just so many things we're doing that we're early in. And, there's much, much bigger players. So everything we're doing, we're just tiny. And so there's huge runway to grow. So I'm very confident that at the end of my time, there's brilliant succession under me. I'll hand over to others who will take it to the next and the next level. And so I'll get to go and sit there with Tony and Nicholas happily and watch and say, aren't you doing well? You've all done very well. And just...
No, they'll be saying, get off your butt and do it.
I'll just sit in on the beach having cocktails.
Can I just warn the audience, there will be time for a few questions. I'm going to do some rapid fire, which I'm against rapid fire. Right. It's like multiple choice, it never works. But can I just try it on you?
Yes.
Because I've been asked to do that. But when I finish the rapid fire, we're going to ask the audience if they have some better questions than me.
Rapid fire.
The first one is, we want 3 things you regret that you wish you could have done better.
3 things I regret.
3.
I don't have any. I basically...
You have to say that 3 times.
Okay. I live a no regrets life. I live a no... Basically, my view is the past is a sunk cost, and it's just not worth saying, the lessons you can learn from it are very useful, but what happened, and as I say, I accept things outside my control, so that's history.
All right, well, that's a rapid-fire answer. The second one, what's the best advice you've ever been given? And if it came from somebody here, that'd be really good.
No, I said earlier that listening to all the advice you're given is useful advice, and I think I'd go with that. I've just learned from so many people that I'd be daft to say any one of them was more valuable than others. Even my kids tell me stuff now that challenge me completely.
Now, if you weren't a CEO,
Yeah.
what job would you be doing?
I would probably still be working in the finance sector because, I'm sort of a numbers geek, but with really smart, stimulating people who stretch me and come to work to change the world every day, I'd go and find somewhere else like that. So I'd have to find another Macquarie somewhere, I guess, if this one didn't want me.
And apart from get off your butt, what is the advice you'd give to your younger self?
Just to any young self, I'd say, like I said, nature, nurture, you've got to play to your strengths. So the life I had was so fun for me and I'm really enjoying it. Other people would have been apoplectic about going and living in 9 cities and 6 countries. I mean, there's so many choices of what you could do with your life. So you've got to understand what are your passions and values and strengths and development areas you complement yourself with, and then just go and play to your character and all of that.
Final rapid-fire question. You admit that you're an optimist, and you clearly are.
Yeah.
Is that the right way to be?
It is for me.
Good answer. We have a live stream audience as well, and I'll start with one of those, and then I'll ask if there's anyone here. The question one from the live stream is, what do you think will be the most challenging aspect of the green energy transition?
Right. Now, you said I was an optimist, and sadly, I'm going to say on the other side of every challenge is an opportunity. So I actually say, what are the most wonderful opportunities from the green energy transition? And it's that basically we can save our planet, which is wonderful, but there's so many ways we need to move on to save our planet. So we've got to find solutions in energy, we've got to find solutions in transport, we've got to find solutions in agriculture, we've got to find solutions in buildings and heat, we've got to find solutions in industry. And, our teams are working across all of those. There's no end of stuff to do. So I actually think it's a massive opportunity. And Macquarie's certainly finding that we're building great businesses off the back of it. So I'd be saying to people, get on board. There's just a lot of change we need to do to stop our planet from burning. It's not going to happen overnight, but there's just a ton of stuff to do. So I think it's opportunities, not challenges. On the other side of every challenge is an opportunity.
You've just proved you are an optimist.
Yes.
Excellent. Second question coming through is, Macquarie is often regarded as a benchmark for risk management in the industry. What do you look for to help aid informed decision-making?
Well, the first thing we do is we say business owns the risk. So our principles, I think you chose these 3 words, Nicholas, opportunity, accountability, integrity, is we say you are empowered with going and looking for the unmet need and the opportunity to make a difference, but then you've got to be accountable for the disciplined execution of that, and you've got to act with integrity, which is thinking about the long-term impacts on all stakeholders and social license. So first thing is, if you want to go and do something, you've got to think through what can go wrong, what have I got the skills to manage, and what should we risk accept, what do I not have the skills, and what should we pivot away from, and take small bets early on. Then we have an independent risk function, which is a second line who's charged with challenging you and looking at worst case outcomes as you correlate. I have to say, I think one of the best risk management approaches is, I call it swim lanes, it's my expression, but basically, if you're good at something and you've built expertise, take big bets and double down there. If you're doing something new, then really focus, take a small bet, learn a little. If things go wrong, either pull away if you can't sort it out, or pivot or learn. But I know my dad said when he got married, the priest said to him, may his mistakes be little ones, and he said he had 3 of us. But that's an expression I use a lot, is may our mistakes be little ones. So where we're taking the big risks, it's in small things. Where we're taking the little risks, the patient-adjacent growth is down the fairway.
Excellent. We have a little time for a couple of questions from the floor. Here we go.
Yes, Tony Frost. I'm on the faculty at the Business School. Shemara, you've joined us from COP27. You're an optimist. Can you tell us briefly your view about the leadership of the countries of the world in business to solve the climate challenges? What is the vibe you bring us from Egypt?
Yeah, look, I mean, as I was saying, it's a big challenge because, the level of carbon and greenhouse gases in the atmosphere now just dwarf anything we've had in 800 million years. And taking it out is not going to happen quickly. So all these transitions take a long time. It took us years, decades to build the infrastructure for the Northwest Shelf or the Pilbara. It's going to take decades. So I think we have to pace ourselves in the journey, and hopefully it's going to accelerate as we go. But I always say we're focusing a lot in what we did before and saying, let's get off gas and oil and all of that. The bigger problem is, what are we going to get onto? Because if we get off all of that and we don't have solutions, whether it's in transport or agriculture or whatever, do we want to go back to cooking with wood? I don't think people are going to take that. So we need to be coming up with, and human innovation is phenomenal. So we've got the cost of solar down and the cost of wind down to where new build solar and wind are the cheapest form of energy anywhere in the world. But the problem is they're intermittent, and we need firming solutions and base load renewables. So we're investing in things like hydrogen, biofuels, battery technology, etc. I have no doubt human beings will sort this out because we're an innovative race and we always save ourselves. To do it, we need to collaborate as well. So the public and private sector need to work together. And there's places where, the Northwest Shelf, the Pilbara, the public sector had to go there and create a framework to de-risk it, to bring the early private money. And then hopefully you catalyse the private money and it just gets going. So we don't need, when we did our first UK wind farms, they gave us this contract for difference offtake. We couldn't have gone in there without it. The last round we bid, it was Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, but now King Charles, is making 100 million quid a year from what we've all paid for annual seabed leasing. And the Treasury is making another £100 million a year because there were enough of us corporates who were confident enough to come and pay massive amounts to go through the pleasure of a 6-year program of getting habitat renewal approvals, of doing the development, the construction, knowing that there's a market there where we can make money. The cost of offshore wind has come down 70% by this 4th round we just bid on. So it's just an example of, the benefit for public sector in partnering early on with bringing the private sector in, and then, governments have a lot of debt at the moment. There's a lot of money in the private sector catalysing us to run with it. So, but there's so many aspects to work on. We held workshops with the MDBs on how they can play a role in developing countries. That's where the biggest emissions are going to be in the world. There was no end of stuff. We had sessions on transport, we had sessions on energy. So there's a lot to get done, and I'm really proud of our teams that they're just getting on with so many things. We're about to do our net zero targets and reporting in December, and it's we keep finding more gigawatts of projects that they're doing around the world, so we need to get this settled by December. But it's over 100 gigawatts of things that we're working on in operations, construction or development all over the world, teams everywhere, and that's just in energy. So, yeah, it's a big thing. But as I say, it's a big opportunity as well.
Good question, Tony. Your course is also, very good. Any other questions in the room? There's a question here.
Hi, Shemara. My name is Jane. I'm part of the full-time MBA cohort.
Oh, cool.
My question is, as a breadwinning mom with a stay-at-home husband, how has this impacted your family dynamics, and how do you reconcile the two perspectives between East and West? And has this affected the way you raise your children, if at all? Thank you.
Yeah, well, I mean, the beauty is there's so many different models now of how we can raise kids in the Western world. And, some people, my girlfriends have kids, some have elected to stay at home. Basically, it's accepting it's a trade-off, right? There's a spectrum of things you can do, but every one of them is a trade-off. Some have stayed home all through their kids growing up. Some have worked and been primary carer. God knows how they do it. Some, like me, have said to hubby, here's the kids, they'll be back in 18 years. Not quite, but, not quite. But it's different role modelling, and we joke a lot. I don't know where hubby is, somewhere in the back of the room, but our son, when he was little, we said to him, what are you going to do when you grow up? And he said, I think I'm going to be a normal person like my daddy. And we said, well, what will you do for money? And he said, my wife will work. And so when he dropped out of university and he'd heard us tell this story, and my husband goes, Alex, what are you going to do with your life? And he said, nothing, I'm going to be a normal person like my daddy. Sarcastic so-and-so that he's. But, the kid's okay. There's probably things about them that drive us mad, but they ain't axe murderers. So they basically can grow up with a working mum who's a bit of a loop head the way I am, a psycho working mum. I've been on the road a lot, but we still get on very happily. And, the choices of things, they're on their journey and they are their own person and they have to go their own way. So yes, it was very confronting when my son dropped out of university, but I had to accept it's his life, not mine. And he's not going to live it the way I want him to live it. He's going to live it the way he wants to live it. And I'm just going to have to get over it because ultimately I have no recourse anyway. I'm not going to throw him on the street. But he's a lovely kid and he'll find his path. And so I think that's what families, it's about compromise and learning as you go. But I think we're all quite blessed in the spectrum of choices we get. I know I have friends who are parents and they're racing around doing stuff. And I know when my husband's been away and I've had to sole parent and it's just a nightmare. My daughter's school lunch doesn't turn up. I have to go home and I had a dinner with Malcolm Turnbull once when he was Prime Minister. I had to go home to turn her shower on. He's going, what are you doing? I'm supposed to be at this dinner with the Prime Minister. And she said, Daddy's much better at doing the chores than you are. But then we hit our stride by the end of his ski trip of 2 weeks where he was, off on the snow. And when he came home, she wanted to get a puppy and Daddy's allergic to dogs. And she said, Mum, when Daddy gets back, you could divorce him and then we could get a puppy. So they're just operators. And, so sometimes, yes, I feel bad, but ultimately, they've got a loving dad who's been a full-time parent to them. And, on the spectrum of kids, yes, we're all, my friends here in the front row, we're all dealing with the joys of now adult children. And you think, mine are doing my head in. And then you go and talk to your friends and you go, okay. Some people do have a doctor, a lawyer, a banker, and, they're all like, you're thinking, that's not fair. But the rest of us are just, beating our heads against the wall, trying to figure it out, bumbling our way through, just like we did when we were at uni. Now it's the parenting stuff. And yeah, it's the next chapter of challenge.
No, well, we can't give advice on that, but just the University of New South Wales has courses way beyond what you've just said. Can we take one question over there? I think there's somebody right over there.
Thank you. I'm Crystal Romero-Cortez, also at the UNSW Business School. My question relates a little bit to what you talked about, collaboration and education and how it can empower change. I actually wonder about this often, how, as an academic, can I make sure that my research can make it to the people who are making these decisions? Because it is something that we talk about, it's something that we try to work on, but at the end of the day, it is not often the case that we get to bridge those gaps. So I was wondering
Yeah, it's a good question. And I was asked last year by the Liberal government to go on a university research commercialisation panel with them. And I thought, I don't know anything about this, but they said, you should do it. I believe in education, so I went on. It was eye-opening because Australia spends $35 billion a year on research. About 20 billion of it is from business, about 10 bill from universities, and about 5 billion from government. Not quite, maybe it's 18, 12 universities and business. It's completely uncoordinated, right hand, left hand, etc. And so we started thinking about how do we make this all come together, because universities are coming up with brilliant stuff. Michelle Simmons was on this with me, where we're not commercialising it. Equally, we business need a whole lot of stuff researched and developed, like our technology for our operating platforms, identification, authentication software, investigation software. And we're not working with the universities saying, can you help me? So we started putting together a whole lot of things, and I'm very pleased to say the Labor government's actually looking at taking and running with this. We looked at lots of models around the world where it's worked, in Singapore, some of the things in Canada. So watch this space, but I do think it's a very missed opportunity. I was going to say a big problem, but everything's an opportunity for me. So
that's what we'll take from this. I've just got time for one more question, and I'm conscious we haven't had one from over there.
Hi, Shemara. My name is Nishmi. I'm currently a student with the business school. So my question is, so how do you, think about future technological advancements and how that, affects the overall finance and banking industry?
Yeah.
And I guess, a couple of technologies that are becoming a little bit more relevant, so probably blockchain or quantum computing, or, how does that actually affect your role in finance and banking?
Yeah, and look, in our banking offering, as I said, we are probably leading Australia in terms of a digital banking offering. I should respect that the Commonwealth Bank also, in terms of user interface, has a very good offering. We're bringing it through end to end now in terms of how we do everything behind the scenes as well. But ultimately, as I said, it's sort of a lead at the coal face business. We've hired 2,700 people in the last couple of years, the bulk of them in technology and operations. And we have all these engineers who are getting on with, importantly, understanding the customer or the community need in each of our businesses, and then how can they bring technology to that. But it's super important to be understanding what's the problem you're trying to solve. But not just in banking, but every sector we're in, healthcare, education, everything, infrastructure even, technology is disrupting it, which I think is amazing. I know there was a view that technology would mean that there would be no jobs, and you've seen where the unemployment rate now is in the world. We're just hiring more and more people. It's driving value for us. We just shared at our results that our operating costs have gone up from 1.3 billion, 1.5 it was billion a year to 2.7. So we're spending $1.2 billion a year more over the last 3 or 4 years in big areas like tech and our platform, non-financial risk and reg compliance are another two. Despite that, we've managed to grow our earnings from in the 2 billions to 4.7 billion. So it's actually creating value. So it's false economy to save on challenging ourselves with how can we do things differently and have our businesses, as I say, it's a Darwinian principle, evolve or die, extinction. So we're very excited about continuing to respond with the blockchains, etc.
That's a very good way to end this. Ladies and gentlemen, firstly, thank you for your questions. It is quite obvious to me that no matter how bad I am at this job, I've managed to make Shemara look how wonderful she is. And there's just no doubt about it. So thank you, Shemara.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
If you enjoy the podcast, please share, rate and review, and subscribe to AGSM's Leadership Podcast on your favourite platform. You can also follow AGSM at the UNSW Business School on LinkedIn and Facebook for more industry insights, or find us at agsm.edu.au.